Hello, strangers. Another Tuesday, another true story you won't hear anywhere else. And this one is a little special because I share it with somebody close. Story number 257. I grew up around a lot of my mother's family. This worked out well for me. I only had brothers, and if not for my cousin Bev, there'd have been no girls my age to pal around with. And this one summer, we were doing just that, running wild across the sidewalks to each other's houses and having sleepovers almost every night. We lived in our swimsuits. You never know when an impromptu run through the sprinklers would be in order. We also had a collection of large t-shirts and shorts thrown on over whenever either set of parents would get on us for sitting on their cloth furniture in our wet bathing suits, of course. But take them off? Right now, we were just about to go run outside and play on the slip and slide again. We had other games too, though. Potions, that was one. We'd amble around the yard finding ingredients, particularly pretty leaves, petals nicked from my aunt's bedraggled rose bushes, and handfuls of drying grass we'd grind mortar and pestle style between two rocks until they got smeary and pasty and that wonderful green smell came out of them. These would be carefully measured into an assortment of containers, otherwise destined for the recycling bin. Then we'd top them off with hose water and leave them in the sun to brew. Looking back, I'm sure my parents were just thrilled about this. I remember at least one weekend when my dad came in from checking the grounds for hazards prior to mowing it to keep the fire hazard of dead grass at bay. When my mom called me outside to look, though, at least 15 abandoned pickle slice and peanut butter jars were lined up on the lanai, like an identity parade. Hey, at least we were outside getting fresh air, right? So we kept at it. Only we decided to move our little coven closer to the trees. You see, our suburbs backed up onto empty lots. They hadn't been developed, and thus they hadn't been cleared. Scraggly wild oaks and manzanita trees lined where the tidy crew cut of our lawn ended. Beyond those trees, the lots were thick with weeds, bushes, and goats' heads, these nasty little burrs that stuck to you like tar with their wickedly sharp hooks. So while we enjoyed telling stories about the forest behind our house, we didn't go in there. We merely foraged on its perimeter. We found a trove of new things there. Mushrooms, grass kept green by the protection of the trees above it, and these little orange plugs. They were about the circumference of a pencil, but squishy, like they were made of paper and cotton. I asked Beth what they were. She thought they fell off a tree maybe, but they smelled funky, terrible, so we never put them in potions. But the mushrooms and grass were gleefully tucked into the jars that we now stored in the bramble of the trees. Well, one such afternoon, Beth told me to wait in her backyard because she had something special. I was giddy with anticipation, and she didn't disappoint. Beth reappeared, now walking much slower, carrying a canvas tote bag. And that bag tinkled and clacked with the weight of 5 fancy bottles. No mere pickle relish jars that still had those boogery green crusts dried on the edge. These were beautiful, frosted glass and cobalt blue. And then she pulled out the best one. It was squat and square-shaped, with a round plug of cork. It looked exactly like a potion bottle. I reached for it, and was surprised to see it wasn't empty. About a quarter of it was full of a honey-yellow liquid. I narrowed my eyes in suspicion, wondering if my cousin had been brewing potions without me. But she just laughed and said, no way. She'd got them from our house. I puzzled, wondering With how many times I'd been in that house, I'd never seen such a treasure. Beth shrugged. "Dunno," she told me. "We had people over. My parents were up late. They're still in bed. I heard my mom say she was going to throw them all out first thing." I was shocked. To throw away such pretty bottles. Beth nodded wisely, and all my doubts fell away as we put our heads together and began plotting a recipe befitting such a magnificent potion bottle. Beth uncorked it, and I immediately deposited some of the best of the flowers still remaining in the yard. But it needed more. Beth docked off to the front yard to gather some of the melting amber leaves from the tree in her front yard. The summer had turned them a brilliant red. I began digging around in the tree line for mushrooms. They were white, kind of plain, but too many fairy tales had told me that they were important, too important to overlook. As I paced, I saw fiddleheads, fat roly-polies, one of those papery orange plugs, then another, and then something red. I peeked in closer. A shoelace, untied, drooping onto the ground, off the toe of a dirty boot. I looked up, and my whole insides crumpled. There was someone standing there, right there, inches away from me. My eyes traveled up the dirty blue jeans, up the dusty skin of a belly with dark hairs scattered across it. And then a hand, filmy and streaked with black, whipped out from above me and grabbed my right arm. I gasped, made a sort of sound as the hand grasped me too tight, then shook me. I couldn't bring myself to look up, already sensing the man. It was a man. A lady couldn't walk around with no shirt, nor would she with a hairy belly like his. While the man was bending down. His breath was hot. It smelled awful, like burned socks and a jack-o'-lantern gone too mushy to keep. I felt hair, long and stringy and damp, swing and tap against my cheeks as he brought that foul-smelling mouth close to my face. I wanted to cry out, but he was so close. I had the startling, immediate mental picture of him biting me if I did. And his mouth did open, and in the corner of my eye, now watering, I saw his yellowed teeth. I knew whatever he was about to say would be bad and scary, because he was bad, and I was scared out of my wits. And as he inhaled, prepared to speak, I heard, "Hey, you! Let go of Molly! Let go of her right now!" My head whipped to the left. It was Beth. Beth was running from the side yard, directly for us. A curse gusted against the side of my face, and then the presence, the sweaty stink of his head so close to mine, was gone as he straightened up. But he didn't let go of me. I chanced to glance at him and saw him coolly regarding my cousin as she charged up. I looked back to Beth. Her running had slowed as she approached, but if he thought he could intimidate my cousin by acting unbothered, man, he didn't know much. Her steps slowed to a plodding, angry stomp march. She stopped only feet away. Unlike me, her eyes were on his face. She looked madder than I'd ever seen. She asked, "Are you deaf? You let her go, or you'll be sorry." I looked back to the man. His fingers were still stamped into my arm, but the pain there was dull, going numb. He was holding my arm up at an unnatural angle, and it started to tingle and go to sleep. His other hand raised to his mouth, and when he took it away, a white stick now hung out over his bottom lip. He sneered at Beth, even as his free hand now plucked a silver square from his pocket. "Oh, really?" he mumbled. He brought the silver square close to his mouth. He flicked at it with his thumb, and like a flashlight, a bright blaze momentarily lit the crags and stubble on his face. "Sorry," he chuckled. It was a mean sound. I saw his eyes lower as he brought that flame to the end of the white stick in his mouth. And his breaking eye contact with Beth was the moment she was waiting for. "Molly, kick!" I didn't think about it. My mind was still stumbling over the stench of the man, the painful tingling in my arm, the cold, bone-chilling fear. But my leg apparently worked on orders. It swung out like at soccer practice and slammed my sneaker right into his shin. His hand loosened on my arm, and with the force of my kick, I went sprawling to the side. The silver square fell from his fingers, flame guttering but alive. And Beth, a hand on either side of the square potion bottle she still held, brought it up and sloshed it right at him. We'd probably made 100 potions in that backyard. We gave each one a purpose, some sort of magic spell they were meant to provide. But once the lids were screwed on and the contents went dim and murky, well, we'd never really tested any of them out. But we must have figured it out along the way. Must have, because when that slosh of potion sluiced through the air, right onto the man's bare chest and stomach and that silver square floating in space, it all went up in flames. The man started screaming. His hands were up, slapping at the bright orange flames now attaching to his chest. I saw the hair on his arms curl, twist, and dust into ash before another hand, a cleaner one, Beth's hand, was on mine, pulling me up and away from the man who was now shrieking and stamping around in a circle. Beth's parents had still been in bed. Maybe they'd missed her yell. Now they came on the run, tearing through the screen door of the sliding glass that opened from their house to the backyard. My Uncle Irwin's hair was all messed up, spiky, and his blue pajama pants flapped around his legs as he ran for the side of the house where the hose was kept. Beth's mom, my Aunt Iola, she came for us, grabbed at us and hauled us away, saying, Girls, who is that? What happened?" I was bawling, but not so hard I didn't hear Beth calmly tell her mother, "A bad man, Mommy. But we cursed him with our potions." She looked at me, and through my bleary vision, I could see her proud little smile. "We did it, Molly." I looked behind her, where Uncle Irwin was now standing over the man. The man was down on the ground, moaning and crying out. My uncle must have put a few of the clues of what had happened together, because he wasn't leaning down asking the man if he was okay. He was just looking down at him. His back was to me, but I bet I could tell what look he had. Probably the look he'd had when the dog had knocked over and broken the TV. Of course, we bugged our parents about it. Finally got the story out. While we'd always pictured fairies and imps living in that forest of an undeveloped lot behind our houses, something had been living there, but it was a lot more troll-like than we'd wanted to picture. I guess they found a tent back there, and some things, some of which looked like they might have been stolen from around the neighborhood, off clothing lines and such. We weren't told what happened to the man, and honestly, with Beth's excitement, I couldn't have cared less. Whatever happened to him, he was cursed, and we'd done it. Beth and I have since grown up, but even in our advanced years, our 30s now, well, we still make a few concoctions, and we use those same ingredients. Well, the ones Beth took from the house, from the party her parents had had. And our favorite drink, special just to us two, inspired by the time my cousin made magic. All you need is a tumbler, a shot or 2 of tequila, and a few dashes of Tabasco, and you'll have made fire too. Specifically, the prairie fire. And that's this week's story. You know, there's a lot to recommend getting older, and I'm not just talking about adult beverages. The freedom of being able to drive a car to wherever you want to go. The luxury of an adult paycheck, out of which you can carve an allowance that you can spend on whatever you want to. You're the adult now, you make the rules. But as old as you grow, try to hold on to that magic of imagination. The ability to look into a dense brush in an undeveloped lot and see magical little creatures. Or to let your magpie eye fall upon a particularly pretty bottle in the supermarket and wonder to yourself, just what magic do you think I can make with such a magnificent potion bottle? Life is short. Might as well have fun while we're here. If you'd like to share any of your own stories, or any drink recipes, I'm not picky, email and socials are in the description, or you can leave them in a comment. Liking and subscribing also appreciated, but honestly, I'm just happy you're here. Thanks for listening, and until next time, stay strange, stay safe, and take care, strangers.